Hello and welcome to the Global HSP Summit. I am Jill Marie Haas, your host, and today I am here with Dr. Tracy Cooper. He is a leading voice for highly sensitive people, highly sensitive men, and high sensation seeking HSPs. Say that 10 times really fast. He is on a mission helping highly sensitive humans on their path of self-actualization and realization. Dr. Cooper is the co-producer of the documentary film Sensitive Men Rising. And this is the first film for highly sensitive men, opening doorways to understanding and accepting of this beautiful trait, which is actually 30% of the world's population. He's also an assistant professor at Baker University, and he has written extensively throughout various mediums on high sensation seeking and highly sensitive persons. So today we are going to talk about working with highly sensitive men and women who are military veterans. Dr. Cooper is also a U.S. Army veteran. Thank you so much for serving and for our freedom. And so welcome, Dr. Cooper.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here and to share, and let's see what happens with talking about HSP veterans.
Yeah, I'm excited about this topic. As some people know, and you and I have had a conversation that I work with veterans, and through my work, about 100% of my clients, they're either HSPs and or empaths, which is fascinating to me. So we got on this conversation, and this is how we got into this conversation topic of what we're going to talk about today, and I'm super excited. So Tracy, tell us a little bit more about the work you do with HSPs and how it relates to even the HSP veterans.
Sure. Yeah, I've been working with HSP since about 2012 or so, I believe. It's been a while now. And so I've written 3 books. I did the first one on HSPs and career. I did the second one on high sensation seeking HSPs, and the third one on sensitive men, right? And then, of course, I've worked on the first movie with Will Harper, Sensitive, The Untold Story, or appeared in that film in 2015. And then Sensitive Men Rising, right, is the most recent, and that's actually releasing this year, 2024. So it's been a long journey on that one for 4 years. But my work has encompassed seminars and workshops, the books. Done a lot of work so far for on behalf of HSPs and on behalf of sensation-seeking HSPs as well. And the work is kind of forever moving forward because there are always new people finding out about these two strong genetic traits that we have. And so there's always a need for people to be spokespeople and advocates. And I don't mind playing that role.
Yeah, that's really great because I am just learning about high sensation seeking with HSPs. This is something actually I think was with you when we started talking about it. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that is? Because I have a feeling a lot of our audience doesn't even know what that means.
Sure, and you're absolutely right. And we did a research study just in last year, 2023. And by we, I mean Bianca Acevedo, Dr. Elaine Aaron, Dr. Art Aaron, and Robert Marhinke. We did a study to determine a couple of things. We wanted to know kind of what was, there hadn't been a peer-reviewed study done yet, really, that really validated the high sensation seeking HSP self-test that Dr. Elaine developed some years ago, but never validated. So we validated that and made a valid test that you can take for yourself to see, could you consider yourself a high sensation seeking HSP? And so the questions are geared towards that. The study found, though, that up to 50% of highly sensitive people might also be high in sensation seeking. And previously, we had thought maybe a third around that number. But so the number is up to 50%, which is kind of extraordinary. And it's extraordinary because we don't spend a lot of time talking about this. And as you mentioned, a lot of people maybe haven't heard about high sensation seeking. And they also may be high sensation seekers if 1 out of 2 is high in sensation seeking and high in sensitivity. So this is a vastly, vastly under-discussed topic that I really am working to shed light on, particularly in light of the new article released last year. We need to be speaking a lot more about the interaction and the intersection of these two traits. So I can cover just very briefly sensation seeking so everybody's up to speed on it.
Yeah,
This
please.
is a trait delineated by Dr. Marvin Zuckerman actually in the late 60s. So it's actually been around longer than has research on sensitivity, which started in the mid 90s with Dr. Aaron. So he originated this trait called sensation seeking as a matter of doing some other research, but basically consists of 4 core areas. And you can consider each one of these and think about it in terms of your own life and how you might score on this continuum. So the first is thrill and adventure seeking, and a lot of HSPs might be like, I don't think that's me, right? And that's fine. But there are the three other ones you might consider, and a lot of HSPs are not necessarily high in thrill and adventure seeking, but they might be high in the next one, novelty and new experience seeking. So if you find that you like to travel, you like to go to out unusual places, you like really stimulating conversations with new people, you like to learn new things, if that's really your bag, you might be high in sensation seeking. The third one is boredom susceptibility. So if you find yourself bored by being around people that are a little bit bland, boring conversations, not like this one, if you find yourself needing extra stimulation, if you need novelty, if you need for things to move along, right, you might be susceptible to boredom. And that's not any kind of indicator that you're lazy or lethargic or anything like that. It's not a value judgment. It's simply part of this trait. So you have a lower threshold for feeling as if you're bored. So the stigma attached to that, I always like to point out that it's not an ethical judgment passed against you if you have boredom susceptibility. It's part of your trait. Just as with sensitivity, your trait is you have a lower bar for overstimulation. Now, the fourth aspect of sensation seeking is called disinhibition. So if sensitivity is sort of about inhibition, disinhibition is quite the opposite of that. So if you're a disinhibited person, you like to break the rules somewhat. You like to do things a little bit more on the wild side. Now, HSPs might be like, that's not me. I don't like to do things on the wild side. I don't like to break rules. But if you're a high sensation seeking person and a highly sensitive person at the same time, maybe you do in some subtle ways. So if you're both highly sensitive and high in sensation seeking, one of the most common things that we see is the way people manifest is through speeding, right when we're driving, which is a little crazy, but I see it all around me. I don't know about you, but when I'm driving, I see people speed around me like crazy. And I'm doing the speed limit generally. So I'm a little more cautious of a driver as I'm getting older. But a lot of people are not. And I always say, there goes the high sensation seeker right around me. But if the way the two traits work together, if you are high sensitive and high in sensation seeking, one is kind of the caution. Think about what you're doing before you do it. And that's the sensitivity. The other one is like, let's go do this. It sounds like fun, whether it's hitting the gas or going out to do something new and fun and unusual or interesting. So the two traits can work really well together. And I suppose we might cover the four aspects of sensitivity real quick as well for people that are maybe not as familiar. I find a lot of HSPs don't really understand the trait very well. They get stuck on the overstimulation part and that's it. They don't understand the rest of it. Or believe it or not, care to understand the rest of it. So I'm big on education about what the trait actually is. So sensory processing sensitivity is developed by Dr. Elaine Aron and her co-researchers. And so it's commonly known as the highly sensitive person or just high sensitivity or sometimes even the acronym HSP. But it really is the scientific term, sensory processing sensitivity. The four aspects of that trait can be thought of as the DOES or DOES, or depth of processing for the D. So we tend to spend more time thinking and processing everything that happens to us. Looking for pattern recognitions, looking for learning lessons from what happens to us during the daytime so that we don't do the same thing again if it didn't work out so well, or maybe we do the same thing if it did work out well. But we spend more time, our brains are set up in such a way that we have these feedback loops that kind of are always active. Even when we're at rest, our brains are more active than in less sensitive people. The O in the does is overstimulation tendency. So again, that bar, that threshold is a bit lower for us with being highly sensitive than it is for people who are less sensitive. Their bar is higher. So they can feel overstimulated with a lot more stimulation, where for us, we're like, we're already out of there because you already crossed our threshold some time ago. We're already uncomfortable. We're already irritated and need to move on so we can quiet our nervous systems down. The E in the does is high empathy and emotional responsiveness. So if you're highly empathetic or empathic, you not only identify with the emotional and affective states of other people, you might feel them as if they're your own states. Now, of course, that's good and bad because you can very easily also overstimulate yourself by absorbing other people's energies. The emotional responsiveness simply means that you have a broader emotional range to experience everything in life. The S in the does is a sensitivity to subtle cues. So our ability to perceive not only cues in the external environment, but also our interpersonal environment. and our internal environment. In other words, our body, our sense of interoception.
Mhm.
We're more aware of how our body is feeling, how we're feeling emotionally, and then how that affects our energy. So those all work together, you can see, to make not only someone that is more deep-minded, but someone that is also has a good heart, possibly. Hopefully, empathy leads to compassion, but not always. So you have someone that takes their time, they think about what they do before they do it, and then they're probably quite reflective about those things. They make great leaders, they make great teachers and educators and healers, coaches, all kinds of different professions. And we're not limited by any real sort of career field. And that's something I always like to talk about as well, that it depends on what you're into and what your interests are as what you should do, but you can do a lot with sensitivity. So that's kind of the basics of high sensitivity and high sensation seeking.
I love it. And so with the different terms, high sensation seeking and highly sensitive person, I really, it's like a tongue twister sometimes. HSS, I will just summarize, it was the 1960s and that was there first.
It
However,
was
that
the
doesn't mean if you're HSS, you're either or. What is the percentage you find in the studies, if there are some, that had that, you know, how many, well, you said 50% of HSPs roughly are HSS, correct?
yes,
So what, and it's like HSPs are 30% of the world's population, right? So
supposedly.
supposedly, right? What would the supposed percentage of HSS or high sensation seeking be?
It's interesting to consider that because, like Dr. Zuckerman, the one who originated the sensation seeking, he said that when it comes to things like genetic traits or temperaments or dispositions, that they kind of exist along a continuum. So, as an evolved strategy, an evolved psychological adaptation in our species, you don't want everybody at the extreme high end of any of these traits because they don't serve a purpose when there's an extreme expression. There's too much of a cost associated. When you're a super high sensation seeker, maybe you do something that cost you your life,
Mm,
or maybe less serious, it has legal, financial, personal repercussions. Like if you speed, maybe you're going to get a ticket, or maybe you're going to get in a wreck and hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. So there are real consequences to being very high in any trait. If you're very high in sensitivity, again, it can be a real problem because your bar for overstimulation maybe is even lower than someone that's just highly sensitive.
mm,
So for the distributions, you're going to have relatively fewer people at the extreme end of any of these traits. And there are many sort of genetic traits that you could inherit. So the
mm-hmm,
distribution is like a bell-shaped curve. You're going to have fewer people at one side. The vast majority of the population are going to be somewhere in the middle. And then you're going to have a lower group that's not necessarily the low end, but it is the low end, but not the extreme low end. It's going to be kind of equal distributions on both sides and then a vast middle group. So with sensitivity, you've got that 30% that are highly sensitive, somewhere in that range of high sensitivity, and the vast middle group of about 40%, and then a low sensitive group of about 30. And it's presumed to be about the same way with sensation seeking, simply because a moderately high expression of any of these traits is most beneficial for the individual as well as the species.
mm-hmm. And I love what you just said there, because there are a lot of people who aren't embracing the fact that they have the sensitivity or they hide it, especially men. So before I segue into the men and veterans and that topic, I just wanted to ask you the correlation that you notice with addiction and high sensation seeking, because you did mention the maybe financial struggles based on some of the high that you get. But those weren't your words, but that's what stuck in my brain.
Yeah, and so sensation seeking, if you're high in sensation seeking, it comes with some real sort of risk factors. And Dr. Zuckerman pointed these out. He actually wrote a book on risky, or actually it was called Behavioral Basis for Sensation Seeking, but also risk taking. He wrote about risk taking.
Mm,
And risk taking is kind of not an inherent part of sensation seeking, but if you find that you are an impulsive person, if you came from a background where you learned to be impulsive growing up, usually some kind of trauma that causes you to be more impulsive, you're at real risk because of the disinhibition and the boredom. If you have those kind of factors playing into the way that you live your life, those risk factors go up for you in addictions because you're more likely to want to break rules or feel it'll be easier for you to break those rules in some ways. And there are a lot of people that are high sensation seeking that have kind of gotten in trouble with it. Not necessarily those that are high in sensitivity as well, because the high sensitivity is more the let's think about it or pause to think before we do something. So you may have an extra caution built into you if you are both sensitive and high in sensation seeking. So that's kind of the good news with it, that you could probably mitigate it. Whereas someone that's lower in sensitivity, and sensitivity is more like a continuum as well with those groups, they may have less caution than you would have if you're high in sensation seeking. So it's kind of the best of both worlds if you really balance the two out.
Mm-hmm. And highly beneficial, as you said, not only to the person, but to the species of humanity, right? And so about this embracing this sensitivity, because it really is a gift. And I didn't know that I was an HSP until I watched the movie that Elaine Aaron had put out. And now I can't remember the name of it. You probably know. So
That's a simple story.
sensitive, the untold story, that's it. Yes. And so there's a lot of people I think who are going to be watching this and think, this might be me. And so embracing this gift, because some people feel it's a curse, or it's really when I'm feeling deep emotion, I don't want to feel deep emotion. Like how do I turn that off, Jill? I can't turn this off. Or don't make me feel emotional. If I'm working with someone, I don't want to open up that can of worms, right? So with that thought in mind and thinking about military, this is what I kind of the people I have in mind right now, because some of them, well, again, my clientele seems to be very sensitive. And I try to explain to them, and I think I was sharing this with you before, that when I first mention it to some veterans, they will be turned off by the term just sensitive, right? Which is expected. I get it. And I was like, hold on, I'm not finished. What about this is the kind of sensitive I mean? I don't mean boo-hoo cry, but I mean high, like you're like the Jason Bourne sensitive. You've got situational awareness. You know what's going on. You're highly calculated and more, right? And then they're, well, when you put it that way, that's kind of cool. So what do you have to say about this sensitivity as it relates to military veterans, and especially those who are and they've gone into combat, and how they might be living right now?
Yeah, to all the veterans out there, I say that you can be highly sensitive, and that's perfectly fine. And if you've been in combat, if you served in the military, you have developed probably a very disciplined mindset, and you've been through that, and you know how to get things done. You know how to how to accomplish goals. You know how to lead missions and participate and be part of a group and be part of a team. And you probably maybe have perhaps been through some traumatic events. And if so, if you've been through traumatic events in the military, those may be impacting you more than for someone that is less sensitive. Why? Is because we have this thing called differential susceptibility that is part of us. In other words, we are more affected by the negative things that happen to us as well as the positive. So the flip side of that is if you were affected by trauma during your military service, you'll also be more responsive to therapeutic interventions. So if you're seeing a life coach, if you're seeing a therapist or a counselor, you'll probably benefit more from it than will someone that's less sensitive. So that's kind of the good news about it. But you've
Mm-hmm.
likely used your sensitivity during your military service on a daily basis, right? So even in very imperceptible ways. So I think the first thing to do with sensitivity is to learn what it is in an accurate way. So the things that I just described, right? The depth of processing, the overstimulation tendency, which is lower bar for overstimulation, the high empathy and emotional range, and the sensitivity to subtle cues. Think about how perhaps you have used those in your daily life in the military. And I know, being in the military myself, that I use those in many, many ways, right? My sensitivity to subtleties made me very attuned to my job, my MOS. And I was extremely good at it because not only was I conscientious and dedicated to what I was doing, but I could notice when things were a little bit off, and I could fix those things before they became a problem, right? And I knew how other people were doing because of the high empathy. And I also knew how I was doing, and I was better able to take care of myself because of that. But if you're suffering now, it may have something to do with you need to seek some help, because you will respond more positively or more readily than will someone that is lower in sensitivity.
Yeah, I like this conversation because what you said about the receptivity is very interesting to me. I've not heard this before. And it's a really interesting concept because you know, I think of the veterans that come to see me. I'm not chasing them down on the street and saying, hey, work with me. Think you need help. They're coming to me. So they're ready. They're feeling ready. So I think about the other ones that are out there that they may have not reached out yet. Maybe they are aware. Maybe they're in that solution oriented place where they get that they do need help, but they're not sure, what the next step is to take, like, what would you say to them as far as like seeking out the right person for them, or what type of treatment even would be, not, I don't want to call it treatment, but for the lack of a better word, like treatment or therapy.
Well, it depends on exactly kind of where you're at in life, where you're at on your journey, how you're feeling, if you're able to take care of yourself with self-care and you understand kind of what's happened to you in the past, if you're ready to seek any kind of real help. It may be that you need to visit with some other veterans groups first, and be able to empathize with other people's stories. Sometimes that's extremely healing, and it is super healing for highly sensitive people to come together, right? So to be in association with at least one other person that's highly sensitive can be extremely connecting and validating. And so you can see yourself in that other person, right? And that can be a huge thing for you, just a big check mark that, yeah, that I'm okay and that person's okay. And it's like, this is a trait I can dig and something I can learn about. As far as finding somebody that really understands high sensitivity, I think it's kind of a hit and miss thing. Any counselor probably can understand your problems and your issues, though some they will all specialize in different areas. Some will specialize in things like anxiety and depression or PTSD treatment, and some will do other kinds of specialties. So you have to experiment a little bit and kind of interview them, right? Before, if you have a session with someone, interview them first. Find out what their approach is, their therapeutic approach. Where are they pulling from? What kinds of systems of thought are they pulling from? What kinds of interventions do they pull from? And if they're a good fit for you, you'll know pretty quickly. Because again, you'll have that empathy to understand where they're coming from and you'll feel that connection between you, whether it's a good one or not, right? But I think you should always feel free to move from counselor to counselor if it's not working for you. You shouldn't stick with someone that isn't hearing you. If you don't feel seen and heard, you should move on to the next one because there's going to be somebody out there that can help you.
Yeah, I think that's really great to offer that permissions, because I think we need that sometimes. We feel obligated, like, well, I started, or what I hear from a lot of my clients is I don't really want to retell my story again. They already know where I'm at, and I don't really want to talk about it again. But I think it's highly beneficial to really reevaluate the benefit of moving to somebody else, how that might be different and how that might be more helpful. That's really good.
Particularly because the counselor is trying to help you recontextualize what you've experienced, right? They're trying to help you change your perceptions in some cases. In some cases, they're trying to help you move along on the healing journey, which is a sophisticated pathway. But if you are highly sensitive, that like I said, the good news is you will respond more readily to therapeutic interventions. So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get more out of those sessions, but not with the wrong person. With the wrong person,
Right.
you're going to be more susceptible to not feeling as if it's working very well for you. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have to tell your story a couple of times, I feel like that's not a bad trade-off if they're actually able to make you feel seen and heard, right? If they're
Mm-hmm.
actually help you with strategies for coping and for healing, I think it's well worth the journey.
Absolutely. And I can also relate that what you said about you can feel that connection and feel that it's going to work. I think that highly sensitive people, I can speak for myself, and just a lot of people I know who are HSPs, we get it. We feel something. We know there's a connection, and we usually can trust our gut. Maybe I'm more advanced on our journey of personal development or not, depends. We can trust our gut to, is this really a fit for me? That's really good. Thank you for sharing all of that. So what else would you like to tell us about the HSP and the military community and veterans? Like, what would be something that we really should get that message out?
I think that if you are a sensitive person, you can successfully serve in the military. You could do a fantastic job. You could have a career in the military if you so wish. If you are a high sensation seeker, you may enjoy some MOSs more than others. But it can be a viable pathway because if you think about it, military life can be quite predictable and structured. And that can be good for people that are sensitive, right? To have a structure that they can know what's going to happen at different times. That can be boring as well, right? It carries this a double-edged sword, but it definitely can be helpful to have a routine. And a lot of sensitive people benefit from having routine. Now, people that are higher in sensation seeking may feel like I need things to change a little bit. So you have to be wise in your choice of MOS, and maybe you need to advance in rank or something, so you have different kinds of responsibilities. You need things to change a little bit more, be a little more fast-paced. But you can be in the military and do a fantastic job, and you can have a perfectly acceptable life or a fantastic life, even depending on what your choices are. But you shouldn't
Mhm.
feel limited by the fact that you're highly sensitive, and you definitely shouldn't feel limited by being high in sensation seeking. High in sensation seeking is glorified in Western culture. It's like the whole thing that's behind all of our media and our film and our entertainment. These people are all high sensation seekers if you think about it for a second. But interestingly enough, a lot of the people that are creating films also tend to be HSPs. They tend to be people that are sensitive. They have that ability to reflect on their own experiences and others, create films that move us in some way.
That empathy, that deep, deep empathy.
And the high creativity. So if
Yes.
you are both highly sensitive and high in sensation seeking, you're probably a very creative person. Creative, not necessarily meaning that you're a painter or a sculptor or a dancer, but creative ideas, creative concepts. Maybe you
Mhm.
solve problems in a new way. Creativity is for everybody every day. It's not something that's limited to an elite few or a few geniuses, the creative genius or the loner or the rebel or the outcast. Solving problems in a new way, coming up with new ideas is creativity manifest. And that's
Mm.
part and parcel of being a human being. That's how we survived and thrived so long.
hmm Wow, I like this. So I have another question that is actually more about you and being a HSP. So I would consider you a pretty successful HSP. And one of the things we're discussing as we go through this summit is, other successful HSPs, because there are some people who are out there, I don't think they've answered their calling. They may very well have their calling and they could stay in their career. They don't have to become a healer or a coach or something like that, or there's, like you said, there's no cap on what the career paths are. But what about you? Like, when did you discover that you were an HSP, and how did that impact your life?
Right. I always knew that I was a more reflective person, a person that was different in some way. Even from the time even before I started school, elementary school, I know I was a little bit different than other people. It was more evident when I went to school that I was more introverted, and I wanted to spend more time reading. I wanted to spend time that was not connected with being part of the herd running around at recess on the field. And so that was something that I carried with me all through the school career. I didn't learn about high sensitivity until I was already in my 40s. So I came to it fairly late in life. I was 43, I think, or 44 when I started my PhD program. That's when I learned about it, unfortunately. And I think today, though, people are able to learn from the many, many, many resources that are available, the films and the videos and the podcast and the summits that are seemingly everywhere nowadays. So there's so many more resources than there used to be, and you don't need to wait till your 40s to find out about it. And it impacted my life because it helped me to make sense of how I had lived and some of the things that I felt were limitations or had not fully understood about myself. Like, for instance, I had cast myself pretty much as a creative person. So I've had an artistic career. I've been a potter, I've been a painter, have a huge interest in photography, filmmaking. But why? You can cast yourself as a creative. So I'm just a creative person or an introvert and kind of go that road. But sensitivity filled in blanks. It filled in gaps that I needed to know about. And it took me a while to understand the trait because there really weren't anybody, it wasn't anybody back then describing it in a way that fully made sense of what the model is, right? The DOES. Nobody was saying that back then. So it
Mhm.
wasn't until I discovered that, or that I came across that anyway, that it made sense to me as a model, a working model. It's like, oh, this is why I feel you're more irritated more quickly than other people. And that's something that it's problematic in some ways, but it's also something that keeps me away from low quality environments.
Mhm.
So the environment that we're in, and that's something I really work on, through my life, is the quality of the environment, the quality of the people that I associate with, the people that I call friends, right? So you focus on environment, you focus on the people that you're associating with, and you develop a growth orientation, right? So you
Mhm.
keep growing throughout life. And since sensation seeking is really a spark. It's really a fuel that's meant to keep you going. You get those little hits of dopamine in the brain every time you do something that's new and novel. It's like, oh, a feel good hormone. Well, it encourages you to do that more.
Mhm.
Sensitivity is a little bit different. You engage sensitivity when you're reflecting and when you're thinking and processing, and perhaps when you're having a one-on-one conversation like now, right? You're feeling more fulfilled and gratified. Well, they both work together though in a really dynamic way. And I'm still reflecting on the way that those intersect for me personally. And so my journey is as much an exploration of my life as it is advocating and helping other people to understand their journeys.
Mm.
But no two of us are alike as well, right? No two of us are going to be alike. So I think don't put us in a box, because you're not going to find any two of us like. You're going to have many boxes,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to
Yes,
need,
within, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's 2 billion of us on the planet, and that number only increases as the human population
Mm-hmm.
increases. So if you have 2 billion people with a B, um, that's a lot of people. That's
It is.
not an insignificant number of people.
Mm-hmm. With a lot of emotion, because we are emotional beings, right? We are, I mean, we all are, even if you're not highly sensitive, we are still emotional. We just might have, those who are not HSPs may not have the depth and breadth of emotional experiences that we do. And not to exclude those people at all, but everybody's valuable and everyone's unique. And that segues into another question for you of what would you say is your unique gift as an HSP that you're using right now, like in your life or in your career?
I found that I was innately kind of set up and structured to be a teacher. So that's in a funny way. I've known this since I was a child. I was always happier sort of demonstrating and advocating and doing something to help teach other people. And I knew this even in my teens. I was in Civil Air Patrol for a while in my teenage, and I became an instructor, right? So I had some early experiences with teaching, and I loved it. I really enjoyed the way that I could interact with people and help them reach goals or realize new concepts, and didn't pursue that until later in life. But I definitely think I've been able to manifest my ability to mentor people and to help coach and lead and guide,
Mm,
um, not only through direct teaching, but just the influence of being a mentor, being someone that can provide that stability when someone else is feeling quite anxious, being able to
mhm,
help them contextualize what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and then distill it down to something that makes sense. So I've been able to use it in my own odd individual way. And I infuse that, I think, with a great deal of creativity and imagination, and I'm always ready to do the next thing.
roll with the punches, so to speak.
I have a flexible approach. I can't say that I have a set of goals that I'm trying to achieve every year. I don't make New Year's resolutions, because I believe, again, that it's an artificial kind of constraint. So I tend to not only roll with the punches, but I think what's new and what's exciting and what's interesting at the
Mm,
moment,
mm-hmm,
even in the
mm-hmm,
next few months or so. So I'm always reinventing.
mm-hmm. I like it. Yeah, I'm with you on the resolutions. I don't do those either. And a lot of people I know don't anymore, but a lot of people still do. So
They
I'm with
do.
you. What's
It's a
good? Go
couple of
ahead.
weeks later and they're done with them. They're already given up on them,
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't even seem to, it seems futile to me, but so are there any last words you'd like to share about veterans, HSPs before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I think the summits are a fantastic way for you to learn about yourself, to learn about the traits. Here you've learned something about sensation seeking. If you don't know enough about it still, go look on it, go look up my books, go look up any of the podcasts that I've done, and you'll find a lot more about sensation seeking. If you are a highly sensitive person, self-awareness is really everything, along with your environment. But you can very successfully learn to adapt your life to your own needs. We spend too much time adapting ourselves to the demands of a crazy sort of life. And we need to be the other way around. We really, life needs to fit us. We need to form it to fit us. And we need to do that really intentionally and consciously. So we have to consciously lead our own lives. And I think that's so important for highly sensitive people. And if you're also high in sensation seeking, you're kind of a dynamo most likely, and you're a little bit uncontrollable. But I think ride that wave and enjoy life and keep inventing new pathways for yourself. And if you can affect other people's lives in a positive way, I think that's a fantastic way of doing it, through service learning or through service one other with other people. If you're a veteran, you've already done a lot of your service, but I think a lot of the rest of it is self-actualization, right? And so you become a self-actualizer through the rest of your life after military service. If you've had issues during the service that have caused you trauma, hopefully you can find some of the many people out there that are willing to help you. And if sensitivity is an element for you in your your makeup, it's something you can learn about, and it's something that you can get past the word sensitive with men. Check out our film when it releases this year. And I think keep in touch with the community and meet some other people that are highly sensitive or high sensation seekers, and you'll do quite well.
Very nice. So, Tracy, where can people connect best with you to find you and learn a little bit more about the writing that you have done and the films?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I'm widely available on social media on Facebook at Tracy Cooper PhD, the same address at LinkedIn and Instagram and Threads. So very easy to find on social media. My website is drtracycooper.org. You can also contact sensitivemenrising.org. So I'm widely available out there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. It's been a pleasure to have you here and learn more about high sensation seeking as well as highly sensitive people and also the military and veterans. So thank you so much for your time and being here, part of the summit. And I'm just very grateful for your time today. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a joy. Thank you so much.